My wife left me for not contributing enough. Little did she know, I own everything. Let me tell you about the most satisfying revenge story that's still unfolding in my life. My name is Richard, and until 3 weeks ago, I was married to Natalie, a woman I thought I knew after 8 years together. Spoiler alert, I didn't know her at all. This story requires some background. I'm a software engineer who's been working remotely since 2019. I make good money, really good money. But I've always been low-key about it. I don't flash cash, I don't drive expensive cars, and I certainly don't brag about my salary. Natalie knew I worked in tech, but she never really understood what I did or how much I made. That was my first mistake. Natalie works in marketing for a mid-sized company. She makes decent money, around $65K a year, which isn't bad for our area. But here's where things get interesting. And this is crucial to understand the whole story. Everything, and I mean everything in our life, is in my name. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, the investment portfolios, even the Netflix subscription. Why? Because when we first moved in together, Natalie's credit was absolutely destroyed from some bad decisions in college. We agreed I'd handle all the major financial stuff until she got back on her feet. That was 8 years ago. Her credit is fine now, but we just never changed anything. It worked for us. Or so I thought. Here's what a typical day looked like. I work from home, so I handle most of the household stuff during the day. I do the grocery shopping, I cook dinner most nights, I handle all the maintenance issues, I manage our finances, and I even do most of the cleaning. Natalie comes home from her office job. We eat dinner together, watch TV, and go to bed. Weekends we'd spend together, maybe go out, maybe stay in. It was comfortable, predictable, and I thought we were happy. But apparently, Natalie had been building up resentment for months, maybe years. She never told me this directly, but I found out later from her sister that Natalie felt like she was carrying the relationship because she was the only one who left the house for work every day. In her mind, my remote work wasn't real work, and everything I did around the house didn't count because I was just sitting at home anyway. The beginning of the end started about a month ago. Natalie began making these passive-aggressive comments about how I had it easy working from home. She'd come home stressed from her commute and make remarks like, "Must be nice to just roll out of bed and start working," or "I wish I could spend all day in my pajamas." I tried to explain that working from home isn't a vacation. I'm often at my computer for 10 to 12 hours a day, dealing with clients across different time zones, handling complex projects that require intense focus. But she'd just roll her eyes and change the subject. Then she started criticizing how I spent my time. If she came home and I was taking a break, watching TV or playing a game, she'd make comments about how I'd been relaxing all day while she was working hard. Never mind that I'd already put in 8 hours of work, done the laundry, cleaned the kitchen, and had dinner ready for when she got home. The comments escalated into full arguments. Natalie started accusing me of being lazy, of not contributing to our relationship, of taking advantage of her hard work. She said I was living like a house husband, but without any of the responsibilities. This was rich, considering I was the one paying for literally everything. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, her car payment, insurance, you name it. But here's the thing that really got to me. She started telling people about our situation. I found out from my buddy Jake that Natalie had been complaining to her friends about how she was basically supporting a grown man who plays video games all day. She painted me as some kind of deadbeat who was mooching off her success. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago. I was in the middle of a critical project deadline. We're talking 14-hour days, high stress, make or break kind of work. I've been living on coffee and takeout, barely sleeping, completely focused on getting this project done because it was worth a significant bonus that would help us pay off her student loans early. Natalie came home that Tuesday evening to find me still at my computer, surrounded by empty coffee cups and takeout containers. I'd been so focused I hadn't done my usual cleaning routine. The kitchen had some dishes in the sink, there was laundry in the basket that needed folding, and I hadn't started dinner yet. She lost it, completely lost it. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she screamed. "I work a full day at a real job, and I come home to this mess. You've been sitting here all day doing nothing, while I'm out there actually contributing to society." I tried to explain about the deadline, about the project, about how this was temporary and would be worth a substantial bonus, but she wasn't hearing it. I'm tired of carrying this relationship, Richard. I'm tired of being the only responsible adult here. I think we need to take a break. A break. After 8 years of marriage, she wanted a break because I hadn't done the dishes for 2 days while working my ass off to pay for her lifestyle. You know what? She continued. I think you should stay somewhere else for a while. Give us both some space to figure out what we really want. I stared at her. You want me to leave? Leave our house? It's not just your house, Richard. I've been contributing to this household for years. I have just as much right to be here as you do. That's when something clicked in my brain. A cold, crystal clear realization. She actually believed that. She genuinely thought she had been supporting us. She had no idea about our real financial situation, no idea what I actually made, no idea that her entire lifestyle was funded by my income. Okay, I said quietly. I'll pack a bag. The look of surprise on her face was priceless. I think she expected me to fight, to beg, to argue about how unfair she was being. Instead, I just nodded and went upstairs to pack. But here's what Natalie didn't know. I wasn't planning to stay away. I was planning something much more educational. While I packed, I called my lawyer. Yes, I have a lawyer on retainer because of my business contracts. I explained the situation and asked about the legalities of what I was planning. He laughed and said, technically, you'd be well within your rights. But are you sure you want to go nuclear? I was sure. I packed enough clothes for a week and went to stay at my brother's place. But before I left, I did something Natalie couldn't have expected. I called every single utility company, every service provider, every subscription service, and put a temporary hold on everything. Not canceled, just suspended. I told them I was going out of town for a week and wanted to make sure there were no issues while I was gone. I also moved most of our joint checking account funds into my personal account, money that was entirely from my paychecks anyway. I left enough to cover her personal expenses for a week, but not enough to pay any bills. Then I left. Day one was quiet. Natalie texted me asking when I'd be back, saying she hoped I was using this time to think about my priorities. I didn't respond. Day two, she texted again. The internet isn't working. Did you forget to pay the bill? I didn't respond. Day three, Richard, the power company called. There's an issue with the account. Can you call them? Silence from me. Day four, this isn't funny anymore. The water pressure is low and the cable is out. What's going on? Still nothing. By day five, she was calling instead of texting. I didn't answer. She left increasingly frantic voicemails. Richard, I don't know what's happening, but all our services are having problems. The bank called about the checking account. There's barely any money in there. I can't reach you and I'm starting to worry. Please call me back. Day six. I had to ask my mom for money to buy groceries. My card was declined at the store. Richard, whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Please come home so we can fix this. Day seven. I called your work looking for you. They said you were on vacation, but your brother said you're not staying there anymore. Where are you? I'm scared and I don't understand what's happening. On day 8, I came home. I walked into a house that was barely functioning. The internet was down, the cable was out, the water heater wasn't working properly, and the refrigerator was nearly empty. Natalie was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of bills and notices, looking completely overwhelmed. When she saw me, she jumped up with this mixture of relief and anger. Where have you been? Everything is falling apart. The mortgage company called. The electric company sent a notice, and I can't access our bank accounts. What did you do? I sat down across from her, perfectly calm. I gave you what you wanted, I said. You said I wasn't contributing enough to the household, so I stopped contributing. The color drained from her face. What do you mean? Natalie, do you know how much money you make? She looked confused. Of course I do. I make $65,000 a year. And do you know how much I make? Silence. I make $180,000 a year. Base salary. With bonuses and contract work, I usually clear about $220,000 annually. Her mouth fell open. That project I was working on when you decided I wasn't contributing enough, it was worth a $35,000 bonus, more than half your yearly salary, for one project. I pulled out my phone and started showing her bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns, documents she'd never bothered to look at in 8 years of marriage. The mortgage payment is $2,800 a month. That's about 65% of your entire take-home pay. The utilities average $400 a month. Both car payments total $850. Insurance is another $300. Groceries and household expenses run about $800 a month. Are you starting to see the problem? She was staring at the numbers like they were written in a foreign language. Your entire salary, after taxes, is about $4,200 a month. Our basic household expenses are about $5,100 million a month. That doesn't include entertainment, dining out, your shopping trips, vacations, or any emergencies. You literally don't make enough money to support the lifestyle you've been living. But I've been paying for things, she whispered. You've been paying for your personal expenses, your clothes, your makeup, your girls' nights out, your gym membership. But every single major expense, everything that keeps this household running, comes from my income. It always has. The silence stretched between us. So when you said I wasn't contributing enough, when you said you were tired of carrying this relationship, when you said you had just as much right to this house as I do, I paused. I decided to show you what your contribution actually looks like. Natalie started crying, not pretty tears, but ugly, panicked sobs. I didn't know, she kept saying. I didn't realize. I thought we were splitting things. How could you not realize? You've never paid a single bill. You've never seen a mortgage statement. You've never had to worry about whether we could afford something, because I've always just handled it. I thought you made good money, but I didn't know it was that much more than me. Did you ever ask? She couldn't answer that. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm going to turn all the services back on. I'm going to transfer money back into our checking account. I'm going to make sure all the bills are paid, and everything goes back to normal. Relief flooded her face. But, I held up a hand, things are going to change. You said you wanted to contribute more to this household. Great. Starting next month, you're going to cover your proportional share of our expenses. What does that mean? It means you make about 20% of our combined income, so you'll pay 20% of our household expenses. That comes to about $1,030 a month. I can't afford that. That's almost a quarter of my income. It's less than a quarter of your income, and it's exactly what proportional contribution means. But that doesn't leave me much for my personal expenses. Welcome to being a contributing adult in a household. The rest of us have been doing this for years. She was quiet for a long time, processing what this meant for her lifestyle. What if I can't do it? What if it's too much? I shrugged. Then you'll need to make some changes. Get a second job. Find a higher paying position. Cut back on personal expenses. You know, the things you've been telling me I should do. This isn't fair, she said quietly. What's not fair about it? You said you wanted to contribute more. You said you were tired of me not pulling my weight. I'm giving you the opportunity to put your money where your mouth is. But I didn't know. That's not my fault, Natalie. You've been living in a fantasy where your part-time financial contribution made you the responsible one in this relationship. I'm just introducing you to reality. The conversation ended with her agreeing to the new arrangement, mostly because she didn't have a choice. But I could see the resentment building in her eyes. For the next week, things were tense but functional. The bills were paid, the services were restored, and life went back to normal on the surface. But Natalie was different. She was quieter, more distant, and I could tell she was struggling with the new reality of our relationship. Then, last Monday, she came home with an announcement. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I've decided I want a divorce. I wasn't surprised. Okay, any particular reason? I don't think we're compatible anymore. I think we want different things out of life. Such as, I want a partner who sees me as an equal. I want someone who doesn't use money as a weapon. I had to laugh at that. I used money as a weapon? Natalie, I supported you financially for 8 years, without ever throwing it in your face. The only reason money became an issue is because you decided I wasn't contributing enough to our relationship. You embarrassed me. You made me feel small. I showed you the truth. If that made you feel small, maybe you should examine why. She had already made up her mind. She wanted out, and honestly, I was fine with that. 8 years of marriage, and it took 1 week of her paying her fair share for her to decide she wanted a divorce. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Natalie seemed to think that divorce meant she'd get half of everything. She started talking about splitting assets, selling the house, dividing up our savings. She even mentioned alimony since she'd become accustomed to a certain lifestyle during our marriage. I let her talk. I let her make plans. I even let her consult with a divorce attorney, which she couldn't afford, so she asked me to pay for it. I declined. What Natalie didn't understand is that we live in a state with pretty specific laws about marital property. And while we were married for 8 years, the vast majority of our assets were acquired through my income, and many of them were purchased before our marriage or held in my name only. The house? I bought it 2 years before we got married. My name is on the deed, I made the down payment from my savings, and every mortgage payment has come from my income. The cars, both financed through my credit, payments made from my accounts. The investment accounts started with money I had before marriage, grown through contributions from my salary. The savings accounts funded entirely by my income. Our state doesn't have community property laws. It has equitable distribution, which sounds like it would favor Natalie, but equitable doesn't mean equal. It means fair based on circumstances. When Natalie finally scraped together money for a consultation with a divorce attorney, she came home in shock. "He said I might not get anything," she told me, looking stunned. "He said since everything is in your name and funded by your income, I might only be entitled to half of what we acquired together during the marriage." And what did we acquire together during the marriage? She thought about it. The furniture? The furniture we bought with my income. But I was contributing to the household. How? By paying for your own personal expenses? That's not contributing to joint assets, Natalie. That's just being an adult. The divorce attorney had also explained something else to her. Alimony isn't automatic. In our state, you have to prove that you made sacrifices for the marriage that left you unable to support yourself. But Natalie had worked throughout our entire marriage. She hadn't sacrificed her career for our relationship. She hadn't given up opportunities to support my ambitions. She'd just lived her life while I paid for it. "This can't be right," she kept saying. "I was married to you for 8 years. I have rights. You have the right to whatever you actually contributed to our marriage. But you can't claim ownership of assets you didn't help acquire." She hired a more expensive attorney, funded by a loan from her parents, but the message was the same. In the best case scenario, she might get a small settlement and maybe temporary alimony for a year or two. Nothing close to the lifestyle she'd become accustomed to. That's when Natalie's true colors really started to show. She began trying to negotiate, to make deals, to find ways to stay in the marriage that would benefit her financially. "What if we went to counseling?" she suggested. "What if we tried to work things out? You said you wanted a divorce because we're not compatible and you don't see me as an equal." I was angry. I was hurt. Maybe I was too hasty. Or maybe you realize that divorce means you'll have to support yourself for the first time in 8 years. She didn't deny it. When manipulation didn't work, she tried guilt. "I gave you the best years of my life, Richard. I supported you emotionally. I was there for you when you were stressed about work. That has to count for something. It counts for the 8 years of marriage you enjoyed. It counts for the lifestyle you lived. It counts for the experiences we shared, but it doesn't entitle you to half my assets. You're being cruel. I'm being fair. You wanted out of this marriage because you thought you could do better. Now you're finding out what better actually looks like." The next phase was anger. Natalie started telling anyone who would listen that I was financially abusing her, that I had hidden money from her, that I was trying to leave her destitute. But here's the thing about the truth. It's verifiable. When her friends and family started asking questions, the real story came out. How I'd been supporting her for years. How she'd demanded I leave because I wasn't contributing enough. How she'd only wanted to reconcile when she realized what divorce would actually cost her. Her own sister called her out on social media. "You literally told me last month that Richard was a deadbeat who played video games all day while you supported him. Now you're saying he was financially abusing you. Which is it?" The social media post went viral in our friend group. People started sharing their own stories about conversations they'd had with Natalie over the years. How she'd complained about me being lazy and unmotivated. How she'd said she was basically a single woman because I didn't have a real job. How she'd talked about wanting to find someone more ambitious. The narrative she was trying to build about being a victim of financial abuse crumbled pretty quickly when people could compare it to what she'd been saying for months. Last week, Natalie came home with a new strategy. She'd been talking to her parents, and they were willing to help her fight for a bigger settlement. They'd hired a more aggressive attorney, and they were prepared to make the divorce as messy and expensive as possible. "We have 8 years of marriage," she announced. 8 years of building a life together. I was your partner, your support system. I helped you succeed in your career by taking care of the home front. I had to stop her there. "What home front, Natalie? You worked full time. You came home every day after I'd already handled the shopping, the cleaning, the cooking, the maintenance. What exactly did you take care of?" "I provided emotional support. I was there for you." Being present in a marriage isn't the same as contributing to marital assets. "My attorney says I have a case for claiming that your increased earnings during our marriage were partly due to my support." Your attorney is trying to justify his fees. "But sure, let's go to trial. Let's put everything on the record." The confidence left her face. "What do you mean?" "I mean, let's have a judge review our complete financial history. Every bank statement, every tax return, every receipt. Let's document exactly who paid for what over the past 8 years. Let's have your friends testify about the conversations you've had about our relationship. Let's make it all public record." She was quiet for a long time. "You're bluffing. Try me. I have nothing to hide, Natalie. My financial records show exactly what I've told you. I've been the sole financial provider for this household. You've been living a lifestyle that your income couldn't support, funded entirely by my work. But that's not fair. What's not fair is you trying to claim credit for assets you didn't help create. What's not fair is you demanding half of something you contributed nothing toward. What's not fair is you rewriting the history of our marriage now that it's convenient for you." The aggressive attorney strategy lasted about 2 weeks. Once he reviewed our actual financial records, he apparently had a very different conversation with Natalie about her realistic expectations. She came home last Thursday looking defeated. "He says I should take whatever settlement you're willing to offer." Smart advice. What are you willing to offer? "I'd already thought about this extensively. I'll buy out your half of the furniture and household items we purchased during the marriage. I'll pay your moving expenses. I'll give you 3 months to find a new place to live, rent-free, and I'll pay for an uncontested divorce." That's it? That's more than fair, considering you're not entitled to any of it. What about alimony? What about it? You worked throughout our marriage. You're capable of supporting yourself. You chose to end this marriage. Why would I pay you to not be married to me? She didn't have an answer for that. "I can't afford to live alone on my salary." Then you'll need to make some changes. Find a roommate, get a second job, move somewhere cheaper. You know, all the things you've been telling me I should do. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem to solve anymore. The final settlement was signed yesterday. Natalie gets $8,000 for her half of the household items, most of which she doesn't want anyway. I paid her $2,000 in moving expenses, and she has until the end of the month to find a new place. The divorce will be final in 60 days. But the story doesn't end there. Remember how Natalie had been telling everyone that I was a deadbeat who played video games while she supported us? Well, now that the truth is out, she's facing some social consequences she didn't expect. Her friends are questioning everything she's told them over the years. Her family is disappointed in how she handled the situation. Her coworkers are wondering why she was always complaining about money if her husband was making good money. And then there's the dating situation. Natalie has been trying to get back into the dating scene, but it's not going well. Turns out, when you're a 32-year-old woman whose story is, "I left my husband because he worked from home, and I thought that meant he was lazy, but it turned out he was making 3 times what I make and supporting my entire lifestyle," it doesn't exactly make you a catch. She's had to move back in with her parents temporarily because she can't afford a place on her own. She's looking for a second job to make ends meet. She's driving a 10-year-old car because she can't afford the payments on the newer one that was in my name. For the first time in 8 years, Natalie is experiencing what it's like to live within her actual means. And she's not handling it well. Meanwhile, I'm doing great. The house is peaceful. I'm saving money without her personal expenses. I'm considering some renovations I've wanted to do for years but couldn't afford because I was funding her lifestyle. I've also started dating, and it's been interesting. Turns out successful women in their 30s don't have a problem with men who work from home. They actually appreciate having a partner who's financially stable and handles household responsibilities. The best part? Last week, I got a promotion at work. That $220,000 a year just became $280,000 a year. The project I was working on, when Natalie decided I wasn't contributing enough, it led to a major client expansion, and I'm now heading up the entire division. Natalie found out through mutual friends. She actually called me to congratulate me, but I could hear the regret in her voice. She was probably calculating what her half would have been if she'd stayed married to me. "I'm happy for you," she said, but it sounded forced. "Thanks. How's the job search going?" "It's challenging. Everything decent requires more experience than I have, and everything I'm qualified for doesn't pay enough to live alone. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're a smart woman." "Richard, do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd handled things differently?" "You mean if you hadn't decided I was a lazy deadbeat who wasn't contributing to our relationship?" "I was frustrated. I didn't understand our financial situation. Because you never asked. Because you never wanted to know. Because it was easier to assume I was the problem than to examine your own contributions. I know that now." "Do you? Or do you just know that you made a very expensive mistake?" She couldn't answer that either. 3 days ago, I found out from her sister that Natalie has been telling people she's thinking about asking me to reconcile, that maybe we could work things out if we both tried harder. I laughed when I heard that. After everything that's happened, after she showed me exactly who she is when the chips are down, she thinks I'd be willing to take her back. The woman who told me I wasn't contributing enough to our relationship when I was paying for her entire lifestyle. The woman who demanded I leave our house when she got tired of carrying me financially. The woman who only wanted to stay married when she realized what divorce would cost her. Yesterday, she showed up at my door unannounced. She'd been crying and she looked terrible. She asked if we could talk, really talk, about giving our marriage another chance. "I made a mistake," she said. I was angry and hurt, and I didn't see the big picture. But we had 8 good years together. That has to count for something. We had 8 years where you were happy because I was funding a lifestyle you couldn't afford on your own. The moment you had to face reality, you wanted out. I was scared. I felt like I didn't have any control in our relationship. You had complete control over your own life. You chose not to pay attention to our finances. You chose not to ask questions about our situation. You chose to assume the worst about me, rather than communicate about what was bothering you. Can't we try counseling? Can't we work on this? Natalie, you filed for divorce. The papers are signed. In 6 weeks, we'll be legally divorced. You made your choice. People change their minds. People make mistakes. Some mistakes you don't get to come back from. Some choices have permanent consequences. She left crying, but I don't feel bad about it. I feel relieved. The moral of this story isn't about money, though that's how it started. It's about respect and understanding and partnership. For 8 years, I thought we were partners. I thought we were building something together. But when it came down to it, Natalie saw me as a provider, not a partner. She was happy to take credit for our lifestyle when she thought she was contributing equally. But the moment she realized how little she was actually contributing, she wanted out. She didn't love me. She loved the life I provided for her. And when that life required her to actually contribute to it, she'd rather give it up than pay her fair share. The divorce will be final in 6 weeks. I'm not looking back.